Something that we take for granted, especially in the summer, is ice cubes. They're just solid water, but somehow they're able to float on liquid water. It is one of the only substances that does this. If you throw a solid chunk of silver into molten silver, it will sink. More interestingly, most life wouldn't even exist if ice sank in water. So in this video, we'll go over what makes something float, the structure of water and ice, and why ice floating is such a big deal. So how does something float? Density measures how much stuff is in an object relative to how big it is, or the mass of an object divided by its volume. This is why most solids are denser than liquids, since in a solid, the molecules are closer to each other. This means that there is less spacing between the molecules, meaning a smaller volume or a higher density. So for example, hot air is less dense than cold air because when air is heated, the air molecules start moving around faster. As the molecules move around more, there is more space in between the molecules, leading to a bigger volume or a lower density. Denser substances sink, while less dense substances float. Because the hotter air is less dense than the colder air, it tries to float above the colder air, which lifts the hot air balloon up in the process. This means that in order for solid ice to float, it must be less dense than liquid water. A water molecule has 2 oxygen atoms and 1 hydrogen atom, which makes the molecule more negatively charged here and more positively charged here. Since opposite charges attract, a hydrogen bond is formed between the hydrogen of one molecule and the oxygen of another. In liquid water, the hydrogen bonds keep the water molecules somewhat close to each other. As we decrease the temperature of water, the water molecules will slow down and move closer, making it denser. At 4 degrees Celsius, water becomes the densest. But when we lower the temperature past that, the hydrogen bonds between the molecules lock them into a crystal lattice structure. This will give the water molecules the rigidity of a solid, but plenty of space in between them. This increases the volume of solid water, making ice less dense than water, thus making it float. So why is this such a big deal? Because ice floats, life is able to thrive in the ocean. Pockets of air are able to form in the empty spaces within the crystal structures of ice. Air is an excellent insulator, which means that it doesn't transfer heat well. With a layer of ice floating on top of the oceans and lakes, it is able to keep the warmth below from escaping into the cold harsh winter. Furthermore, if ice sank, then the ocean floor will be filled with ice, destroying an entire habitat for many different animals. We wouldn't have icebergs either, so the Titanic wouldn't have sank, but we wouldn't have the massive sheets of ice in the ocean reflecting sunlight back into the atmosphere. The Earth will be a lot warmer without ice floating around. And there we have it. Ice is one of the only substances where its solid form is less dense than its liquid form. It is possible due to the structure of ice. As liquid water freezes, the hydrogen bonds between the water molecules rearrange themselves into a crystal structure. This leaves a lot of space in between the molecules, increasing the volume of ice and therefore decreasing its density. And thankfully, due to the empty spaces, air pockets form to insulate the oceans as massive ice sheets float above them. The existence of life may not even be possible if ice didn't float in the first place. I hope that you all have learned something interesting today. Thank you for your time and stay hydrated.